majority here. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is the 2023-2024 impasse resolution public hearing with the Tallahassee Professional Firefighters, IAFF Local 2339 in the City of Tallahassee. This is a quasi-judicial hearing. It is 10 o'clock in the morning, scheduled to end at noon. At this time, let me go ahead and recognize the city attorney to kind of walk us through today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as you mentioned and as you all know, this is a public hearing at which the City Commission will resolve the disputed impasse issues between the Tallahassee Professional Firefighters, IAFF Local 2339, and the City of Tallahassee. The process is governed by Florida statute. By way of background, in March of 2023, the collective bargaining negotiations began between the union and the city for a one-year bridge contract. After 18 negotiation sessions on December 7, the union declared an impasse with the city. With input from both parties, the Public Employee Relations Commission, or PERC, appointed an independent special magistrate who conducted a hearing on the impasse issues on March 27th of this year. Special Magistrate Christopher Schulman rendered his recommended decision on June 17. The city did not reject any of the special magistrate's recommendations. On July 2nd, the union rejected the special magistrate's recommendations concerning specific provisions of Article 12, salaries and pension, for the supervisory bargaining unit. The union submitted its position and recommendations for resolving the impasse issues on July 8th. The city communicated its position and recommendations for resolving the impasse issues on July 18th. All of the materials that document the process that I just described have been provided in the agenda item in advance of this meeting. The matter is now before the City Commission to conduct a quasi-judicial public hearing. At this public hearing, the City Commission is required to sit as a neutral decision-making body with a strict duty to act with fairness and impartiality. The Commission is required to hear and consider equally the positions of the city and the union regarding the rejected recommendations of the special magistrate, and then to take action it deems to be in the public interest, including the interest of the public employees involved, to resolve the disputed impasse issues. Based on the union's submissions, the disputed impasse issues to be resolved at this public hearing are limited to the following for the supervisory bargaining unit only: Article 12.2 across the board increases and Article 12.13 pension. Each party will have 25 minutes with an additional 5 minutes for rebuttal to explain its position to the City Commission. The Treasurer Clerk will keep time. He will indicate a warning for the 25-minute segment at 3 minutes prior and at 1 minute prior for the 5-minute rebuttal. I would ask that you hold questions and comments until the deliberation time, and that is to ensure that both parties have equal time to make their presentations. This hearing is quasi-judicial in nature, and as such, public comment is not required by the Sunshine Law. However, in accordance with City Commission Policy 108, an opportunity will be provided for members of the public to speak at this special meeting. Also consistent with City Commission Policy 108, the public comment time will be limited to 30 minutes total after the presentations. After the public comment, the Commission will have the opportunity to ask questions, deliberate, and reach a decision. The decision as to the rejected impasse issues that are the subject of this hearing is final. Following this hearing, the parties will reduce to writing an agreement addressing the resolved issues. The agreement will be submitted to the city manager and the members of the bargaining unit for ratification. But even if the agreement is not ratified by all parties, the City Commission's action at this hearing as to the resolved issues will take effect as of today's date and for the remainder of the fiscal year. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any questions on the process for the attorney? Okay, seeing none, we'll get right into it. Mr. James Rantley, welcome. On behalf of the union, you have 25 minutes.
Thank you very much. There we go. Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. It is my privilege and has been my privilege to represent IAFF Local 2339 through this impasse process, a process that by statute, as was just explained, ends here. There's a process of negotiation that, as you heard, went on for many sessions, did not result in agreement. Under statute, the two parties selected a special magistrate who held a hearing and issued recommendations. Under the statute, both sides have the ability to accept or reject those recommendations. With regard to the rank and file unit, a decision was made to accept those recommendations, and therefore we had the issue was resolved. With regard to the supervisory unit, because the supervisory unit recommendations were far less generous, as we'll discuss, the members of the supervisory unit sought rejection to put the issue as statute dictates before you for final resolution, and that's why we're here. There are two issues to be decided today, and two issues only. The first is from the collective bargaining agreement, section 12.2, having to do with what, if any, across the board wage increases will be granted for the 23-24 bargaining fiscal year. And then in that same article, section 12.13, with regard specifically to what the employee contributions will be to their pension plan for that fiscal year. As we go through this, and the city attorney read this to you, but there's a part of this that sometimes in my experience in these hearings kind of gets lost. The statute says, in terms of this hearing, it says that thereafter, the legislative body shall take such action as it deems to be in the public interest, comma, including the interest of the public employees involved. As I make my presentation today, I ask that you keep that portion of the legislative direction and statutory direction in mind. The statute, the legislature has laid out 5 factors that should be taken into account when resolving impasse. These are for the special magistrate, and from our perspective, carry forward to this public hearing. The first is the legislature has said that what should be considered and what is relevant is a comparison of the wages and benefits paid to the members of this bargaining unit or to people doing like or similar work, so public safety work, in the local operating area. So in this area, what is relevant according to the statute is a comparison of these employees' wages and benefits as they compare to other public safety employees in the local operating area. Secondly, the statute dictates that what's also relevant is a comparison of the wages and benefits paid to the members of this bargaining unit as they stack up against people doing like or similar work, again, public safety work, in like-sized or similar governmental units within the state, and we'll touch on that. Thirdly, the statute dictates that what also must be kept in mind in resolving these issues is the interest and welfare of the public, and that a comparison of the peculiarities of employment should be considered. Therefore, we should be talking about comparisons of people that do like or similar work, who share the same hazards of employment and have the same or similar qualifications for employment. And finally, the legislature said it is relevant to examine and to consider the availability of funds. So let's start with factor 1. And we're going to look at this in 2 separate groups. We're talking about the local operating area and public safety employees in the local operating area. We're going to start with a comparison with Tallahassee Police Department. Effective October 2023, the City of Tallahassee granted police department supervisory lieutenants, and again, what's before you today is only the supervisory personnel from the fire department, so captains and battalion chiefs. So looking at what the city's actions were with regard to pay and benefits for supervisory personnel in the police department, the city granted in the first year of what was a 3-year contract, granted supervisory lieutenants first-year wage increases that ranged from 8.5% to 32% in year 1, depending on where they were in the step plan. In stark contrast, the city manager's proposal as it relates to captains and battalion chiefs that's before you today is a 0% wage increase for 23-24. Working from the same city budget in the same contract year, what possible justification could exist for such a disparity in treatment between the city's first responders? As to the second issue that we're asking you to weigh in on today, currently, Tallahassee Police Department supervisory lieutenants contribute 10.99% of their wages toward their pension benefits. Under the city's proposal that's before you today, depending on which tier these supervisory fire department personnel are in, the city's position is that they should contribute either 14.19% or 16.19% of their wages towards their pension benefits. Again, what is the justification for having fire department supervisors pay between either 3.2 or 5.2% more than their police department supervisory counterparts for the same pension benefits? Secondly, with regard to Tier 1, we need to look at the city's position with regard to the other contract, the other bargaining unit, a comparison of the rank and file members from the Tallahassee Fire Department. We're still under Factor 1. This is the same department. It's the local operating area comparison. Following the city's acceptance of the special magistrate's recommendations as it relates to the rank and file bargaining unit members, for 23-24, firefighters received a 5% wage increase, engineers a 1.5% wage increase, and lieutenants a 2.5% wage increase. The city did not reject that recommendation from the special magistrate and granted those city employees, those rank and file bargaining unit members, those wage increases for the 23-24 fiscal year, albeit not back to October 1, and we'll discuss that in a little while. How do we justify granting all employees in the fire department a wage increase for the 23-24 fiscal year and stand by 0 for the members of the fire department that supervise those personnel? Additionally, and of tremendous relevance, is the fact that during the hearing, the impasse hearing, the city made clear that they had budgeted 3% for 23-24 for wage increases in the fire department. That amount was budgeted. Yet we are here today putting before you a proposal for 0. Where's the 3%? It was in the budget. Likewise, with regard to pension contribution, the city's position that's before you today is to have members of this bargaining unit pay 1.25% more for the same tier pension benefits as their employees they supervise in the fire department. The proposal is that the members of this bargaining unit would pay either 14.19% or 16.19% for their, depending on what tier they're in, while the rank and file is paying 12.94 or 14.94%. From a morale standpoint, the members of this bargaining unit cannot help but see that disparity, that difference, coupled with a proposal for a 0% wage increase as some form of punishment. What did they do? Let's move on to Factor 2. This is a comparison of these employees with employees, public safety employees, providing service in similar governmental units within the state of Florida. So what cities are we going to use? Well, to determine which cities we looked at, the city in its last two comprehensive annual financial reports has made clear the cities that it considers itself in comparison to. And here's the list lifted right out of your own audited financial statement. So the union conducted a wage survey using this list of cities. Now, the wage survey included all of these cities except Daytona, because Daytona, we were never able to get the data from Daytona that was current. And we were up against a timeline to get it done. So the end proposal that we put forth during bargaining and was put forth at the impasse hearing included a comparison of the then current wages and benefits for all of the cities taken from the CAFR list, with the exception of Daytona. And here's what it looked like. In terms of base wage, examining the firefighter classification throughout their career, in base wage, the Tallahassee firefighter was behind the curve in year one, 16.5%. By year 20, 14.82%. If we then examined total compensation available and re-examined the comparison to that same group, at year one, the firefighter's compensation was 18.13% behind, and by year 20, 16.86% behind. And yet, we are here today with a proposal from the city for 0% pay increase for fiscal year 23-24. Factor three, the interest and welfare of the public. The interest and welfare of the public is best served by having and maintaining a fairly paid, respected fire department bargaining unit that's treated fairly. That's what serves the public's interest. The interest and welfare of the public is not served by creating an environment in the fire department in which there is constant low morale and an ongoing turnover problem. Factor four, a comparison of the peculiarities of employment. In the public hearing, there was some evidence put forward about how the union's proposals stacked and should be compared to what the city had offered and or granted to its general employees. From a statutory standpoint, that's irrelevant. You're comparing apples and oranges. Those people do not share the same hazards of employment. They do not share the same physical and other qualifications for jobs. And so, according to statute, this comparison of the peculiarities of the employment of the fire department is not suitable for justifying against wages and benefits paid to people that don't share those same peculiarities of employment. We would suggest that any comparison that raises the issue of what general employees did or did not receive should not be a part of your consideration in resolving this impasse today. Finally, factor five, the availability of funds. There are three issues we want to touch on here that are simply, they can't be disputed. They're absolutely factual. Number one is the city included in its 23-24 budget funding necessary to provide for a 3% wage increase for all members of the fire department from October 1, 23 through September 30th, 24. Those funds were in the budget. There's no question about that. And yet that's not what's been provided, and it's not the proposal that's before you today. Secondly, As of September 30th, 2023, the city's fire services fee fund, according to your own audited financial statement, had a remaining fund balance of $5,384,000. Those funds are available to be spent at your discretion for providing fire services in the city. Additionally, the city's own Director of Financial Services testified during the hearing that he is not aware of any prohibition on the city utilizing general fund revenues to offset or supplement the funding of fire EMS services in the city of Tallahassee. He was very clear about that. And in fact, the ordinance that established your fire fee makes clear that the fire fee is intended to provide a portion of the funding of the fire department. Yet the position taken by the city throughout impasse is those are all the monies we have, not a dime more can be spent, and we're prohibited from spending general fund revenues in the fire department. It's simply not true. As of September 30th, the city's unassigned, just the unassigned category in the general fund balance totaled $2.271 million. The city has funds available to resolve this impasse for the entirety of the 23-24 fiscal year. So what are our recommendations for you in resolving these two disputed issues? First, as it relates to the across-the-board wage increase, the union's position throughout bargaining was that members of this bargaining unit, captains and battalion chiefs, receive a 1.75% wage increase for the 23-24 year. We are here at a public hearing arguing about 1.75% wage increases. We're not here arguing about a 10% raise, a 15% raise, astronomical benefits. That's not what's before you. 1.75%. When the city had 3% budgeted. And yet the position that's been put forth by city administration before you today is zero. We ask that you provide for a 1.75% base increase to wages for this bargaining unit effective October 1, 2023. Secondly, with regard to pension contributions, we would ask that you award one of two things. Either the rates recommended, contribution rates as recommended by the special magistrate, which would be either 14.19% or 16.19%, or the rates currently being paid by the rank and file bargaining unit members in the fire department, 12.94 or 14.94. Either of those are fair and justified, recognizing that the City of Tallahassee fire department employees are either paying the highest rate in the state of Florida or the second highest rate by leaps and bounds as compared to every other fire department that has a Chapter 175 pension plan in the state of Florida. Not even close. Tampa leads the way, but we understand that I could not get confirmation before this hearing, but my understanding is they have taken moves to lower theirs because of the recruitment and retention problems that's causing their fire department. But right behind them, next on the list, out of over 300 plans that we examined in the state of Florida, Tallahassee's was next in line as the second highest. We have sought throughout bargaining to have that rate lowered, not asking to be the lowest. We're asking to have that lowered. And what's reasonable is either the special magistrate's recommendations or the rates that are currently the city's asking members of the same fire department to pay, the rank and file members. I don't know how, quite frankly, a pension plan can have people in the same department in the same tier paying two different contribution rates. I don't understand that. That's the proposal that's before you today. And most importantly, we ask that the wage increase portion of this be made effective from October 1, 2023 forward. We utilized a process that's in statute, has been in statute for decades, for how these impasse resolutions or impasse proceedings are resolved. No matter of pointing finger about who caused the delay and how much delay. The process, no matter where you implement it, is not a fast one. Having exercised the process that the statute calls for to resolve bargaining impasses, employees should not be penalized when that process finally is exhausted and some amount of wage increase is granted. They shouldn't be penalized by saying, well, yeah, but it took a year to do it, so you lose the year. Too bad for you. This bargaining unit utilized the statutory process to resolve this impasse, which is ending with you today. Whatever your decision is with regard to wages should be effective for the year in which it was bargained, the full year.
You have 3 remaining minutes.
We thank you for your time.
No more no more comment on the last 3 minutes? Waiving the time?
I'll waive the final 3 minutes.
Okay. We'll now have a presentation by Mike Madmore, counsel for the city, representing the city.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
25 minutes.
Thank you, members of the commission, for this opportunity to present information to you so that we can resolve this impasse today once and for all. We're here, as Mr. Brandley said, for a very limited purpose of resolving the compensation issue for 29 battalion chiefs and captains. All the other issues, whether it's for the battalion chiefs and captains or for any other employee in these bargainings, has been resolved by the special magistrate. The parties have decided the special magistrate did the right thing, made the right recommendation, and all of those other issues. Now, I'm going to point some language out, and that is, if I may, any compensation increase, whether realized by increasing wages or lowering pension contributions, should be for those ranks where doing so is needed to bring it, meaning compensation, to the 60th percentile of the comparable department's average. That is a quote from the special magistrate. That's not what I'm arguing today. This is what the magistrate identified as what should be the standard. All the parties agree with
Mr. Madmore, can you pull your microphone?
that. Yeah, sure. How's that?
Better.
Now, he made a finding that comparing base pay of the chiefs and the captains at that standard, using his own analysis, his own comparables. He looked at other cities, other municipalities. He looked at their population. He looked at their cost of living. He considered other relevant economic indices. And then he said that the market rate for the chiefs was $98,706 start. Our compensation, he found, was $107,249. That's 8% higher than the market target, or $8,542 higher than the market target. It's not my argument. It's not what the city put on the table. It's what the magistrate found as fact. With regard to the captains, if we looked at the 60% market, he found that they were at market, $91,470 to $91,828. And so, based on this information, based on this data, based on the market, he says the recommendation for the appropriate wage adjustment for battalion chiefs and captains is a 2.5% reduction in their contribution for pension and a $500 non-recurring pay action. We accepted that recommendation. We accepted his recommendation completely for all the issues involved. Now, who is the special magistrate, and how does he come to give us this recommendation His name is Christopher M. Schulman. He had to apply to the Public Employees Relations Commission, who had to vet him as one of the 40 national experts in labor relations and labor economics before he could get on the list to then be considered and picked. He made that list, and then he was picked. He was picked by the chiefs and the captains as their choice. He is a very experienced labor lawyer. And when he practiced labor law, he represented labor unions. He's not a management labor lawyer. He represented unions. He has served and made decisions as an arbitrator, a hearing officer, as a special magistrate in over 2,500 cases. Again, he was selected by the chiefs and the captains to resolve this matter. And he resolved this matter in his determination. He said the appropriate compensation change is a 2.5 pension reduction and $500 non-recurring. In making that recommendation, he said the following, and I quote, "I seek to balance pay disparities with the comparable jurisdictions against the fiscal responsibility limitations associated with using the fire service fee to pay for these changes." Isn't that what we want a magistrate to do? Isn't that the right thing to do? To balance our fiscal responsibilities with comparable jurisdictions and market, and to look at pay disparities and resolve them with the resources that we have available? That's what he did. Now, throughout this entire process, from the start of the declaration of impasse by the chiefs and the captains, right through the hearing, they made it clear that starting salary at the fire department was the priority. That's what they said over and over again. And competitive pay ranges. Not that everybody gets the same, not that everybody gets something, but that pay ranges should be competitive. That's what they charged the magistrate to do, and that's what the magistrate did. The magistrate, by the way, looked at market data submitted by the city, market data submitted by the chiefs and the captains, market data that he found himself. He did all of that analysis. And this is what he comes up with, that the competitive pay ranges for the chiefs and the captains is achieved with a 2.5% reduction in pension and that $500. Not an across the board. No across the board is necessary in this case. Now, what are we talking about when we're talking about salaries? So the entry-level base chief salary is $107,249, and it tops out, without our adjustments, at $131,029. The average is $115,000. With supplements, the average is $129,000. These are the numbers that we should be looking at. Captains start at $91,470, top out at $118,000. The average is $100,000, with supplements $113,000. I want to quote someone else. This quote says, "The union's comparison also demonstrates that the further up the rank structure, the chain of command and employee advances in Tallahassee, the more competitive the starting salary for the new ranks is, as compared to the other departments examined." This is what they're saying, that as you go into the captains and into the chiefs' ranks, those ranks are competitive compared to the other departments examined. The quote goes on, "The union's wage comparison found that the starting salary offered to employees promoted into the captain and battalion chief classifications in the Tallahassee Fire Department are fourth highest among all of the comparable departments." That quote is from the union's brief to the magistrate. They come in here today and say the magistrate's wrong and they're going to repudiate him because he's not giving it to everyone the same. It was their point. It was their argument. Now, quickly going over our comparison of the market for the battalion chiefs, we looked at Tallahassee, Gainesville, Jacksonville, Lakeland, Panama City, Pensacola, and Daytona. And we found that our starting salary, like I mentioned a few seconds ago, was $107,000. The 60th percentile in that market is $92,000. Those people start the day 14% above market. Now, if we make our adjustment that the special magistrate offered, moving their paycheck up by reducing their pension contribution, that 107 number goes to 110. If we look at starting for captains, ours, like I said a few seconds ago, is 91,470. Looking at that analysis of those market, the 60 percentile is 79,868. Without any adjustment here today, without any acceptance of the magistrate's increase, that's 13% above market. With the increase that we're accepting from the special magistrate, that number goes to 94,470. Now, those wage increases, that realization of higher compensation, we all have to keep in mind that we also have a substantial pension benefit. There was a pension benefit mentioned in their presentation in comparison to the police. And our pension plan C costs the city approximately 40% for each employee above their pay. And that gives them full retirement at 25 years of age. Full retirement at 25 years of age. With 81% income replacement. And they have bought, one of the reasons why I would say they're slightly higher than other employees is they have bought a 3% automatic annual COLA after they hit age 52. A COLA of 3% for the rest of their life, no matter what the cost of living is. Now, retroactive pay. There's a problem with retroactive pay. For one thing, the statute suggests that it's not appropriate. The statute says, because they showed a slide on it, but let me read again that portion of the statute. It says when we resolve this impasse, we don't have a contract, a ratified contract, it's resolved through this impasse. It says, the law, at 447-403, Part 2, the legislative body's action taken pursuant to the provisions of Section 447-309 shall take effect as of the date of such legislative body's action for the remainder of the first fiscal year, which was the subject of negotiations. Not that you reach back. Think about that. If you did that, what if you reached back and took money away from them? Could you do that? I don't think that's contemplated in the statute. I think it means the action is resolved today and it goes forward for the rest of the year. Importantly, this special magistrate could have, but didn't, recommend retroactivity. The chiefs and the captains asked the special magistrate to clarify and reissue his decision and put retroactivity in his recommendation, and he rejected that request. They would have made the request in the first place if they had retroactivity. So it's clearly not in his contemplation. Now, also, we have a bonus, we have a non-recurring increase, and we have a reduction in pension contribution. I don't know how you retroactive any of those. A bonus is a thing in time, right? You can't go back to October and give a bonus. You give the bonus now. So, now, with regard to what other employees of the city make or may have negotiated in their contracts, we gave the special magistrate a lot of information about that. We went back like 10 years. and giving him all sorts of information so he could have it to consider. He gave a thoughtful and careful analysis of that history, and he found that it was not helpful, and they were not comparators, and we should not take that into consideration. He said, let's look at the other fire departments in the comparable marketplace, not what's going on in other jobs here. He says, and again, I'm quoting him, the comparison of the Tallahassee Fire Department bargaining unit compensation to that received by either the Tallahassee General Workforce or the police bargaining unit is inopposite. Specifically about the police, he said, well, I acknowledge that police employees also have significant hazards of employment, physical qualifications, retirement plans, and job security. The nature of the work is qualitatively different, as are the respective daily schedules. Thus, factor 4, which is whether you compare who you're comparing this with, weighs against a comparison of the union's proposals here to the wages and benefits of the other employees, bargaining unit employees or not. He considered that. He looked at this situation. He found that what the police are receiving is not relevant to what we should be doing. There was some talk about other, public interest, and of course the public interest is key. But we all agree, and the special magistrates agreed, that with the chiefs and the captains who are before you today, there's no recruitment or retention issue. We have no problem with recruiting or retaining battalion chiefs or captains. Another point, the city has accepted the special magistrate's recommendations in their totality, as they would apply to everyone. It wasn't absolutely on point with what we urged him to do, but we took the whole package. He wrote this up as one action to be taken. He didn't break this out. There's not an order for the chiefs and an order for the captains. There's an order. And the city's accepting all of it. It's interdependent. Now, Magistrate Schulman's decision was made on June 17, 2024. Nothing has changed in the past 65 days. What we're hearing today is just re-arguing what was already argued before the special magistrate. The captains and the chiefs declared impasse. They submitted and committed to having this magistrate consider this issue and make a studied determination. At the hearing, they put on testimony. At the hearing, they cross-examined the city's HR experts, budget experts, pension experts. They supplemented the record with additional documents. They submitted a detailed written brief to the magistrate. He was selected by them. I mean, we selected him too, for sure, but he was their number one choice. He did his job. He studied this material and the testimony and the record for over 30 days. He considered everything that was presented to you today. Nothing presented to you today for your consideration was not before the magistrate, who is an expert in labor relations and labor economics. And this is what he recommended. The 2.5% reduction in pension contribution for the chiefs and the captains, which will result in an increase in their take-home compensation and $500. And no mention of retroactivity. No retroactivity. So with that, I conclude my remarks. I have a I have a draft motion that I would like to give to the clerk, if I may. And I guess I'm going to conclude with one thing. Mr. Brantley asked the question. It's a legitimate question. Why? And the answer is because that is what the market dictates. That's what the data dictates. It wasn't arbitrary. It was reasoned. It was studied. And so we would urge that the commission resolve this impasse by accepting the recommendation of the special magistrate for the chiefs and the captains. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brantley, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you. I'll start by saying that the union is not in a position to speak to how Special Magistrate Schulman came to his recommendations. I have no idea, though he gave us some hints in how he laid out his recommended decision. In terms of him being our number one choice, I don't know where Mr. Mattermore got that information, but what happens when we get a panel of 7 special magistrates is they strike, we strike, they strike, we strike, and he was the last one remaining. So to the extent that indicates he was our number one choice, then I guess he was also Mr. Mattermore's number one choice as well. What I can tell you from his recommendation is that he did not take the city's wage analysis, and nor did he take our wage analysis that was built on the exact same list of cities that this city has included for its last 2 audited financial statements, stating in the management discussion and analysis letter that these are the comparable cities with the city of Tallahassee in the state of Florida. We used that same list. He did not. He picked 3. From how he got them, I have no idea. He chose, his recommendations were based on Gainesville, St. Petersburg, and Cape Coral. 2 of those, St. Pete and Cape Coral, are not considered by this city as comparable cities according to your audited financial statement. So I'm sure if he had picked, Weewahitchka and Laudie, he could have painted any picture he wanted. I don't know why he picked those 2. I have no idea. But it is not consistent with how this city sees itself in comparison as it relates to tax rates and millage rates and services. So if those list of cities are comparable for purposes of taxation, why shouldn't they be comparable when it comes to employee benefits and pay? I can't believe that anybody that has lived in this most recent economy, Special Magistrate Schulman or not, believes that a 0% increase to your base wage is fits with the market, is fair, is justified. Most of us would understand, based on the recent years of cost of living, that that's moving backwards. Your buying power of your wages just went down if they stagnate in an economy where the cost of living continues to increase. If you are to go with the recommendation from Mr. Mattermore, I believe this bargaining unit will end up being the only employees in the city of Tallahassee that got 0% wage increase for the 23-24 year. Again, I ask, how is that justified? Mr. Mattermore says it's based on the market. What market? I would suggest that if it's based on anything but the market, it's based on personal animus, if it's based on politics, if it's based on anything other than hard vast economic numbers and/or a matter of fairness as it relates to what we are doing elsewhere in the city, it's not justified.
You have 1 minute left for your rebuttal.
Special magistrate did not make any recommendation with regard to the effective date of his proposed wage increase. He didn't say one way or another. We sought to have him clarify that, to tell us what his recommendation was, and the city objected strongly. I think their opposition motion was 11 pages. So we don't know what Special Magistrate Schulman recommended as it relates to an effective date. We're asking, as a matter of fairness, that whatever wage increase you award today be effective October 1, 2023, and I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Matamore, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be very quick. In terms of the market, if you were to accept the special magistrate's analysis, if you were to accept the union's analysis, I read the excerpt from their brief, or you were to accept the city's analysis, and each used some different comparators and came to, different numerical conclusions, but all three analyses had one thing in common, and that is they all found that the captains and the chiefs were at market or above market. That is not in dispute. And that drives everything. That was the issue they put to the magistrate. Get us to 60%. And the magistrate looked at their numbers and our numbers and did his own analysis, and all of them had them at market, 60%. And they acknowledged that in their testimony at the hearing before the magistrate. Now, with regard to our pointing out to the magistrate that once you issue an order that does not have retroactivity in it, you cannot go back and reissue that order because the Public Employees Relations Commission only allows one order to be issued. So we were just pointing out the law. We didn't want there to be a procedural defect in these proceedings. And that's all. Now, I want to talk just really briefly about availability of funds that was brought up today. And that's discussed at length by the magistrate. But the point that the captains and the chiefs made at the hearing and in their brief, and the point that they're trying to make today with regard to our fiscal expert that testified, is that general revenue funds should be used to fund these increases. Because quite frankly, these numbers for the captains and the chiefs exceed our budget at 3%. And the other resolutions that we have for the other ranks far exceed our budget at 3%. They say take it from general revenue, and we all know better than that. We all know that that means the fire service fee is diminished as a tool of fairness, that then the city's taxpayers, the citizens of the city, have to pick up that extra money for all the exempt and for all the non-city people in the service area. We know that. And that's what the magistrate said. Let's honor the purpose of the fire service fee. And that's all I have, sir.
Okay. We have had opening remarks and presentations by both the union and the city, counsel for the city. We have had 5-minute rebuttals on both sides. It is now, Madam Attorney, time for public comment. We have a 30-minute time limit on the public comment, but Mr. Clerk, how many public speakers do we have?
We have 4, Mayor.
Okay, then we are in good shape. When you are called, please state your name and address for the record, please. 3 minutes. And Mr. Clerk, you'll let them know when they're at 30 seconds.
Absolutely will.
Great.
Speakers will speak to the microphone. There's a microphone standing behind the firefighter presentation table. The first speaker is Troy Anzalone. And as the mayor said, each speaker will have 3 minutes. There is a light in front of the mayor that will also turn yellow at 2.5. and I'll give you a warning at that point as well.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, fellow commissioners, Mr. Manager, and staff. I'm holding a longer version of what I was going to say that would probably take closer to 15 minutes, and I would invite any of you to maybe meet with me, and I would share some things. I know today it's pressing on time. I first want to introduce myself. I'm Troy Anzalone. I'm a battalion chief with the Tallahassee Fire Department. I started my career in 1998. It is difficult to put into a 3-minute period what I represent to the city, what I represent in relation to my fellow captains, other chiefs, and the members of the rank and file. I have to be a good communicator. I'm sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
One of my jobs is to communicate well between my command staff and those that I supervise and that I serve. It is difficult to come up here because of justification for the job that I do. The job that I do is significant in a sense that I'm called to duty. I'd lay my life on the line for any one of you at any time, and I've done that for 26 years. I'd lay my life on the line for any citizen I signed up. It's very difficult to hear my worth in on a piece of paper. It's defeating. It gets a little discouraging. So what I'm trying to do is look at presenting to you what my roles are in the supervisory position, the role I'll continue to do. My fellow captains and chiefs did share some sentiments, so I'll be speaking with similar tone. The folks that I'm going to be representing, we do feel that devaluing when we look at zero. My $100 bonus was going to equate to a 0.004% raise. It kind of set me back. I'm very grateful for my job. When I started my career, I started as a reserve. I did this for a lot less, and I've always been grateful. I do 3 jobs.
Here's about 30 seconds.
I do support my family with jobs, and at this time, I will continue to serve to the best of my ability. But if I left today, I would be feeling of just being needed, but not very valued here. A lot of my colleagues are feeling that. I'm trying to speak from a level of relational than some of the political and
You're at
more
3 minutes.
official tone. Okay, I'll concede my spot. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Before we move on, can we get somebody to check the microphone, please?
Back. Yeah, take a step back. It sounds good. It's too close.
Nonetheless, we heard the previous testimony. Okay, our next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Misty Sullivan.
Your name and address for the record.
Sullivan, 2916 Share Road. Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners, and all that are here today. I am a lifetime resident of the City of Tallahassee, a property owner in both the city and Leon County. My immediate family owns 6 properties within the City of Tallahassee. I invested over $1 million in a property on the south side of Tallahassee. I am here today to ask you to do away with politics and employ you to use some common sense. The neutral decision-making body representing and working for the citizens of the Tallahassee, supervisory employees. If we look at that, you look at your top lawmen, your top linemen, your top city officials, and your top firefighters. I believe we can agree that these men and women have the most experience, the longest length of service to us. Those ones with the ability to train and mentor our new employees. They're the employees who have given to build the legacy of excellence. They are always first to respond. My daughter and granddaughter were in a car accident, when my father had a medical emergency before he passed away, when there was a bomb, yes, a bomb, in a vehicle, when there was a major accident on I-10 and a baby was ejected, the firefighters and their supervisors who trained them were the first to respond. Remember when this department and the city had such pride that there were over 300 applicants for a few openings? The magistrate said that we had no problem with recruitment or retention because in our last round, we had 21 applicants. 21 applicants is a problem. As we develop more in our community and increase our population, taller buildings, electric vehicles, these take special techniques from firefighters. We need experience. The supervisory unit is the best of the best. If you don't have somebody to train the rookies, the rank and file, you lose something that is unreplaceable. It's invaluable. If I looked at every one of you as
You're
a
at 30
business
seconds.
and only gave you and you a raise because you are newest and not the others, it would be a problem. I employ you to do what's right. Thank you to everybody that has served. The citizens stand with you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Next is Anna Marie Shealy.
Your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Anna Marie Shealy. Normally, I'm here to represent my husband, who's a firefighter, but today I'm going to represent the people of Tallahassee also. I did a survey. I own Capital T. I did a survey. We got 77 responses. 100% of our people in Tallahassee support our firefighters. 100%. 92% believe that the city commission should accept the terms from the union on the one-year contract. 92% believe that the majority of the commission should step in sooner next time by showing up for the firefighters. 93% say that all pay across all ranks should be addressed. So I'm standing here to ask you, are you representing the 6%, or are you going to represent the 93 and the 92% when you make your decision today? Thank you.
Our next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Stanley Sims. That's the last speaker I have, Mr. Mayor.
Your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Stanley Sims. I'm at 1320 Avondale Wayne. My son is a firefighter. This is personal. And with personal matters, to keep me focused, I've been told to concentrate on one word. The word I chose today, City Commissioner Richardson, is integrity. Integrity is what you do when nobody's looking. Well, we don't blew the nobody's looking thing. But we don't have to blow integrity. The law, the Bible says that the law was issued by Moses. But truth and grace came by Jesus Christ. What am I saying? These firefighters is not about just putting out fires. Why? Because of the caliber of people we have in our city, we require them to have more. You got to have more because you got citizens out there that have heart problems. Some of y'all think I got mental issues. So whenever a police call is called in dealing with any type of health, here comes the fire. And you know what I love about that? I had my first, that I know of, major anxiety attack in Walmart. Karen, I thought I was going to die. Sometimes I could not breathe, then it passed, and then sometimes I could not speak. First on the scene, firefighters.
You're at 30 seconds.
Second, sick way. And I could not talk, but I could hear them say, I heard the EMT say, well, you all can go on and go. He said, no. We're going to see this out. That's what the fireman said. Let's show our firemen some integrity and some decency. We have a history of paying everybody the same thing.
You're at 3 minutes.
Let's not exclude them. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
No additional speakers.
Okay. Colleagues, do we have any question? Well, first of all, Madam Attorney, any comments?
No, sir, this would be the appropriate time to ask questions of council and then to deliberate and make a decision.
Let's ask questions of council first for clarification, and then we can get into deliberations. Sound good? So what questions do we have? Commissioner Matlow.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you both for the presentations today. A couple questions. Mr. Matamore, you spoke of the market rate examples. Can you give that definition again of what you're looking for, or what we're calling market rate?
Expressing what was said by both parties, the magistrate, well, I'm quoting the magistrate saying, in making a recommendation that those ranks were doing so, is needed to bring it, meaning take-home pay, to the 60th percentile of comparable departments' average.
So if we went with straight market rate, there would be 40% of the departments would be paying higher in the comparison. Is that?
Well, I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
When you're saying the market rate comparisons are at the 60th percentile,
That means-
so that's not the top pay, that's the
That's-
median, right above average.
Let's start, we're looking at the starting pay and the top pay, and we're looking at 50% being a comparable average. We would move that to the 60th percentile.
Okay. That's the only question I had on that one. We talked about availability of funds. The fire services have largely been funded by the fire services fee. Do we provide fire services to Leon County schools and churches and other exempt organizations?
We provide fire services to a large number of exempt properties, probably in the neighborhood of 50% of the properties out there. And then we provide fire services to everyone who lives outside of the city in the county. So it's a county-wide service area. So if we were to put a tax burden in whole or in part on just the people who are paying taxes as city residents, all those other people would be relieved of any obligation to pay their fair share.
Do the fire services fees we pay contemplate our individual share of covering exempt properties?
What we do in the fire service fee is we are able to have a fee that goes against all these other entities that enjoy the fire service. So the county and the exempt pay fire service fees with the city.
Does a portion of the fire services fee that I pay go towards fire services at Leon County schools?
I would think so. I know that there has been, I know that there has been some discussion in the past as to what the schools would pay or would not pay for that service, but I'm sure that if a fire broke out at a school, our fire department would respond.
Okay. Would there be anything to prohibit the city from using general revenue funds to offset or pay a contribution towards those fire services?
Nothing except the fairness of it all, because as was testified at the hearing to the magistrate, and what the magistrate found in his recommendation, if we rely on the fire service fee, then we're spreading the cost across everyone who is enjoying the benefit. If we start using general revenue funds paid by city taxpayers, then we're creating an inequity.
But are we not spreading the fire services fee that we're paying, individual homeowners are paying for their house to exempt? Aren't we already taking on that burden?
Yeah, but the point is this, and that's good, and we can use those funds to fund the fire services that everyone's enjoying, so they should pay. But if you were to say, let's now infuse taxpayer money from the city over and above the fire service fee, but you don't have that same equal contribution from the others, now they're getting a discount. And the burden is falling on the city taxpayer to make up the difference. And that's what the magistrate does.
I understand. I'm just trying to say, how is the burden any different from using tax dollars versus fees paid by, I pay sales tax dollars, I pay property tax dollars, I pay a fire services fee. That burden would be absorbed one way or the other.
Because we set the fire service fee for all three populations, exempt, county, and city, to be fair, to fund the fire services. If we were then to take an extra burden and put it on one of those three groups, we've created inequity.
Okay. So your argument on the availability of funds is it's not fair, but it's completely within the bounds of
No,
the law.
my argument would be that if we start relying heavily on general revenue funds for the provision of those fire services, we've undermined the purpose of the fire service.
Okay. On the comparison departments from the city, I think we've all established that we're not looking at general employees that may have received pretty significant pay raises. We're looking at employees that are directly comparable. Public safety is a top priority of the city of Tallahassee. So are you looking at other public safety officials in Tallahassee, or specifically the comparisons and other?
For what purpose, Commissioner?
For the employees that you'd like us to compare the pay rates to?
Yeah, right.
Are we looking at public safety in the city of Tallahassee, law enforcement, or only?
Oh, did we?
Yes.
You mean during those negotiations? Yeah.
Yes, okay. And when we have the different comparisons presented by the fire union and the city used, and the special magistrate, I guess, picked his own cities as well, those come to wildly different conclusions. Is that correct?
Well, all three. I mean, everyone used different cities, but all three analysis for the chiefs and the captains, whether it's the union's selection of cities, whether it's the cities, or whether it's the magistrates, all three came to the conclusion that the chiefs and the captains were at market.
Okay. The second question, so do we have enough money? And that was the first question that I kind of wanted an answer to, who we're comparing it to. We talked about the retroactivity portion, Mr. Matamore, and I believe you said that the legislative action will take effect for the remainder. So that statement in the law is whatever the legislative action is taken. So if the legislative action today was to make it retroactive to October 23, that would just be implemented with the remainder of the budget year. Is that your understanding?
Well, right, but my point was that the law sets the date of the action for today, and then it is for the remainder of the fiscal year. Now, if we don't have a contract by the end of the fiscal year, it becomes the status quo. One would think that we hopefully would have a contract by that time. But I think contemplated in that statute is that you don't reach back. And I made the point that if that was the case, that you could do that, I mean, let's not just only, think of it in the positive. Could you claw money back? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's all prospective.
If I might,
Yes, sir.
what is true is that this legislative body may resolve these issues, these two issues today, in any manner that this body feels is in the best interest of the public, the city, and the employees, period. Period.
Mr. Metamore, does the legislative body, are there any state prohibitions on the legislative body for making this retroactive?
Well, I mean, if you're asking me, could you give a lump sum that would compensate somebody for the effective date? I mean, you could make a lump sum in any amount you want. We all can't go back in the time machine.
Sure. Is that your understanding as well?
No, sir. If you wanted to, you could certainly take that action if you wanted. If you wanted to rule today that whatever wage increase this body decides to give is effective October 1, 2023, the city would simply go back and calculate the difference between what employees have received and what they would have received had they received your wage increase effective October 1, 2023, raise the pay that much and give them the difference.
Okay.
But
That's certainly within your
That would
power.
be given in a single pay action.
Has the city ever had to do retroactive pay from after a contract negotiation?
I don't know.
before? Anybody?
This city?
You know?
I don't know if this city has.
Can we get the answer to that question?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. We'll get the answer to that question. And then the third argument is the pay enough? Is 0% a reasonable amount to ask for? Help me understand how we're looking at comparable rates and then coming to the 0% conclusion. It seems to be that would be penalizing employees for working their way up to their current salaries when we start comparing it to other bargaining units, when we compare it to other public safety officials, and we compare it to peer cities. Have any of the peer cities given 0% raises this year?
Well, first off, I would take issue about that because what the special magistrate recommended was a 2.5% increase in their take-home pay that's effectuated through a reduction in their pension contribution. That's actual money that they realized, that I gave those figures. The total package of cost to the city in 2024 for what the special magistrate recommended for the chiefs and the captains is about 3%. So I don't think there's any wage increase. There's no across-the-board percentage increase.
And thank you. I think that's all the questions I have for you. From the union's perspective, how did you determine the request that you're asking for?
At the beginning of the negotiations, there was a comprehensive proposal given, I believe, on the opening day of bargaining, when the parties sat down, in which the union had done their homework on the front end and found that some classifications were further behind than others in terms of the comparables. And so they've never asked for everybody to be treated the same as was suggested. And they came in seeking for captains and battalion chiefs, a 1.75% wage increase for that particular, that bargaining unit, based on what they were seeing prior to going to the table. Again, remember, we're now talking about data that, because this thing has gone on now for the better part of a year. So they pulled the data from those comparable cities that we've been discussing to see where they were in a snapshot at that time. And those percentage figures I gave you were from a comparison of tracking a firefighter in each department through their career to see where they were at year 1, 6, 11, 16, 20, and max.
And those are the numbers where you determined that it was between 15 and 20% less compensation overall?
I'm sorry?
Were those the same numbers when you were talking about it was somewhere between 15 and 18% less compensation on those comparables?
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Matlow?
Yes, sir. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes. I wanted to talk, a lot of what we have to decide today is really based on the public's interest, including the employees of the public. In your analysis, have you heard from, I think you spoke in your presentation about employee morale. Has this wage feud affected employee morale at the fire department?
I believe the answer to that is yes. I think we have seen an uptick in turnover and particularly firefighters on the lower end of their careers looking for other places to go. I will tell you that right now, statewide, there's an ongoing competition, very stiff competition among governments, cities and counties and fire districts for a limited pool of dual certified firefighter paramedics. And these agencies are approaching their attraction and retention and recruitment processes by either chasing the money or by trying to create a more favorable work-life environment by changing and altering the work schedule to make it more favorable, or through benefits. And those young people are keeping their radar up, I'm seeing, because they know they're being heavily recruited by departments all over the state. So there's been an uptick in the last couple of years, as has been made public here in terms of the turnover within Tallahassee Fire Department. And you've seen a downward trend in terms of the number of applicants, as you heard from a member of the public, that comparative to what used to exist here. And so we're in a very competitive labor market. I don't see that turning itself around anytime soon because there is a statewide shortage of firefighter paramedics as this entire state explodes the growth. Stations are coming up, new units are coming online, people are reaching retirement years and leaving through attrition. So there is a tremendous demand, and those cities and counties that don't want to become training grounds with revolving doors are trying to find creative ways to be competitive and to stay competitive.
Okay. Would you agree that part of the public interest is protecting the public's dollars, making sure they're allocated appropriately?
Absolutely.
Okay. That is something we have to balance as we try to find.
Absolutely.
On, have there been any impacts to services from the fire department recently?
No, I don't, the members of this bargaining unit would never let that happen.
Okay. On the retroactive point, your argument was that it can be made retroactively by the legislative body. I think we established that. Okay. Those are all the questions I have. I'll save my comments till after. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to focus on the magistrate, please, as you provided the resume of this gentleman. First of all, he was not from here, correct?
Correct. He's from Tampa, Florida.
So he's from out of the area. And as I understood, he's done this for more than 2,500 other cases.
Correct.
Okay. He was selected by both parties, agreed upon by both parties.
Correct.
Right? He submitted one order.
Correct.
Correct? But by some dividing of the baby, we now are dealing with an order that has been partially implemented because as we talk about firefighters, but we're talking about firefighters and engineers who have already received their raises and their benefits from that order that has been issued. Is that correct?
Yes, they found that the magistrate's order was completely correct and acceptable.
And it was not retroactive, correct?
It was non-retroactive.
Okay. Even though there was one order issued, it was partially implemented. And today we're here to deal with the part that was severed off to really turn one order into a 0.5 and a 0.5 or whatever. And so I see my task today is to make this whole, to make this back to being one order, and doing what the magistrate who came in was paid handsomely to do, to spend time taking information and taking the facts from both sides, analyzing and doing what he needed to do to come to a decision. And because the decision wholeheartedly was accepted by the city, but not by the union, we're now here today to deal with the rest of it. And in my opinion, dealing with the public good, having accepted this order and moved on, may have been the best use of that money and that time to do that. Can you remind us why we are dealing with a one-year negotiation while we're also dealing with a 3-year negotiation as well?
Well, we're currently in negotiations for a 3-year contract. We've met several times on that, but this was a 1-year contract, a bridge contract that was an idea that was brought to us by the International Association of Firefighters.
Okay, so the union came to us and asked for, what did you call it?
I call it a bridge 1-year contract.
Okay, and asked for a bridge. But here we are in August with the fiscal year that ends September 30th. And the bridge has been compromised because we brought in a magistrate to help us save this bridge. But now we've bifurcated it. And now we're here today to deal with part of it because the other part has been dealt with, and the firefighters, frontline firefighters and engineers have received their compensation without retroactive, and we're now dealing with the supervisors. And why I appreciate and support firefighters. There's never a case of that. I'm just interested in us landing this plane so that we can continue in earnest with the 3-year. And so I wanted to get clarification that we had a qualified magistrate to come in to do this, agreed upon, paid for by both parties, provided information that he then used objectively and independently to make a ruling. He made not 2 rulings, but 1. And as a result of that ruling not being satisfactory to one side, it got bifurcated, and we're here today to now figure out what we need to do to finish this. Is that
That's correct.
summation? Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Commissioner Porter, and then the Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there something, Mr. Mattermore or whoever, is there something unique about our pensions that makes them in any way incomparable to other pensions?
Well, yeah, we have a pension plan that has aspects to it that makes it more costlier than some others. One benefit in particular that drives up the cost is the 3% COLA. And so all of that's actuarially considered. And like I said, we're paying about 40% for each employee on pension. That's our contribution.
Did you have any comment?
There's each of these pension plans, though they have, most of them have the same, are built kind of under the same format with the same collection of elements to them. They differ slightly because different bargaining units want different things, or different cities are more objectionable to certain things than others. Some cities enjoy a higher level of premium tax revenues that flow back to the cities that are designed for supplemental benefits than others. So they're not all identical. They're all structured very similarly. And that's why the argument for the union is not that they should be paying the lowest or that they should be paying the same as FRS. That's apples and oranges again. What we're saying is, among all of those varied pension plans, this one right now, the contribution rates are either the highest or second highest in the state by far.
If I may, there's also differences from one plan to another as to how they're funded. Some plans use state funds to fund the pension plan, and that would drive the cost down for the participants. Some allow those state funds to go to the participants. And so that would explain the distinction in the payment amount.
And while I'm not familiar with the history of this pension plan, I will tell you that prior to I believe it was in 2011, 2012, the legislature changed the rules, but prior to that, many of the pension plans like this one in the state of Florida developed tremendous unfunded liability that drove up their overall cost because they were able to take what was then referred to as pension holidays, where they could tinker with the assumed rate of investment return and grant themselves kind of an ultra-low pension contribution, or in many cases, no pension contribution, sometimes over decades. And the legislature put a stop to that, and I think it was 2011 or 2012. And so many of these plans who we hear have very high contribution rates, that's not the normal cost. That's the normal cost plus the credit card bill that's been built up sometimes over 20 or 30 years. So that's not the raw cost of the plan.
As far as other public safety employees or other kinds of employees, to compare firefighters with paramedics, if the police are not comparable, I mean, what other work would you say is comparable?
Well, the magistrate felt that the comparator should be other fire departments, people doing the exact same work in the exact same market, competing with one another. And that he said there was a wealth of information about what those people are getting paid. So of course, that's the best comparator.
My final question, for both of you, in your experience, I mean, how common is it for a legislative body to reject a special magistrate's recommendation?
I can't put it into percentage. I have seen it plenty of times where the legislative body's resolution, they didn't agree 100% with either side and formulated what the legislative body felt was in the best interest of everybody in resolving the impasse. I've seen them go lockstep occasionally with the union's position, but I've also seen them go lockstep with management's position as well.
So in your opinion, it wouldn't be unusual to reject a special magistrate's recommendation?
No, and I wouldn't see it necessarily as rejecting the special magistrate's recommendation. It's because in this case, we did that on behalf of the supervisory bargaining unit. It's just a matter of having heard all of the evidence, coming to a resolution that you as commissioners feel like best serves the interest of the employees and the public to move us forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple questions. And I'm impressed with the background of the special magistrate as well, but you indicated that he had how many days that he took to study this issue before making his final recommendation?
He had approximately 2 months.
2 months. 2 months. And we've heard here this morning, we haven't been here 2 hours yet, and have heard testimony from, 25 minutes of testimony from 2 attorneys. The other question that I would have of the department, has there been a reduction in, have we seen battalion chiefs and captains leave our department because our salaries aren't comparable to other departments throughout the state? And I've heard that firefighters have left, but have there been instances where battalion chiefs and captains have left because salaries in other departments?
No, they have not. And I would suggest that it's because they're being paid in a comparable positive market rate.
Okay. And then my final question would be, the issues that we're dealing with now, could they be dealt with in the 3-year negotiations that we're currently in? For instance, if you wanted to see a 1.75% increase or better in the battalion chief and fire and captain's salaries, could that be negotiated then in the 3-year contract that we're now looking at? Or,
Not for the 23-24 year, no.
okay.
That'll be a lost year.
No, but I think what you're asking, Commissioner, is our wages,
Right.
our pensions, our economic issues on the table right now being negotiated between the city
Right.
and the chiefs and the captains and the IFF. It's absolutely that is true. We're in the middle of that.
Well, we're not in the middle of negotiating wages for the next 3 years because we've been unable to do that or pension because we have to have this one settled before we know where we're bargaining from. And the flip side of that coin that you're speaking to is the city could also approach the next 3 years for 0, 0, 0. Again, city's within their right to propose no wage increases for another 3 years. And back to the other question, I don't think, once somebody has 15 years or 18 years in a department, it would, unless they're taking a job in a higher position in another department, they're not likely to leave. That's not the issue. It's that if we continue to address only starting and bottom pay, and we continue to hold cap here, saying, well, you're here and you're not going anywhere, you're kind of captive, we got you. Pretty soon, we got people coming through the door making a very narrow gap between what we're paying them because they are in high demand, and the people that are here, we say, well, we got you trapped, you're not going anywhere, we can pay you whatever we want. And there's a close gap between supervisors. So the question then is, what's the value in promotion and taking on the responsibility and gaining all the additional training and certifications to promote if the gap isn't all that large?
If I may, and I'll be extremely brief, on that particular issue, one of the things that you didn't get to hear from Chief Anzalone is that a large majority or a majority of the supervisory unit are people who are in the drop. And the people who are in the drop received a $500 bonus in this. So that's a 0.5% impact in their pay. That's why there was nothing for them whatsoever. And we have had an uptick in people who are looking at getting dry runs or purchasing time in the past year because they are not looking at staying here in the drop, and that will be a loss of experience.
Commissioner Richardson?
That's all I had.
Okay.
Mayor.
No more questions. Let's move into deliberations. Who'd like to start us off? Commissioner Mallow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, pull up my notes. Touching on the 3 points at issue, I think in regards to the pension, what the other bargaining units rate seems fair to me. Seems to be in the best interest to have the exact same bargaining pension. So that would be the reduction to, I believe, the 12.94D and the 14.94C. I think if we're looking at comparable between bargaining units, we can look directly at our own city and what those pension rates are. I don't think that there's anything more comparable than a pension plan available to people within the fire department within our own city. So that's going to be my position on that point. On point 2 for retroactive, whether this contract can be retroactive, I did have a chance to look in 2019. This body has made collective bargaining agreements retroactive previously. So it wouldn't be outside of the norm. It would actually be the practice of the city of Tallahassee historically that when these agreements come to conclusion, we make them retroactive. And I think another point on that is the magistrate made his ruling over 2 months ago. It took us 2 months since he thought was the point. So he was thinking at least June, if not before. I know we didn't get to open it back up and see exactly if he wanted to recommend retroactivity, but this process has dragged on and on and on and on, and I don't think it's at the fault of the city or the union, but as what's in the best public interest, it's let's have the conversation, let's go through the process, and when we do find resolution, let's make it from the start of the contract, because I think when we don't do that, then we incentivize dragging out the process, because we're always able to, either side has the ability to drag this out past the due date, and that will always negatively affect the public and the employees, the public employees that are represented. So I do think we should make it retroactive to 2. And then on the pay compensation, I haven't seen any other comparables that offered a 0% pay raise. I haven't seen them in the city of Tallahassee from any other public safety unit, and wasn't presented from any of the peer cities that in their last negotiations, they only got a 0% pay raise. I think we recognize we're never comparing apples to apples. Every city's different. Every city pays for public services in different ways. Largely, they'll have different duties depending on other services that are available. But I do think the point that the negative impact to employee morale for a 1.75% raise, 1.75, y'all, that's not a huge amount. That's not 3% across the board. That's not 5 or 6% adjusting for inflation. Even with the 1.75 raise, retroactive to October 2023, that's probably still less spending power for these employees based on what they were earning simply a year ago. So I do think, we're here today because the special magistrate made a recommendation. He neither adopted the union's position nor the city's position. So he felt that the city's offer wasn't strong enough. So I think he also felt so it would be no fault of the union to make that retroactive. If he had adopted the city's position and said, this is what it is, then I think we could look to the union and said, y'all drag this out for a year and it shouldn't be retroactive. But considering he recognized, even in his analysis, the offers on the city of Tallahassee on the table didn't go far enough. So I think looking at that and just my own personal experience in the community and seeing how this issue has affected the public at large. It's not just the members of this single bargaining unit. This has spread like wildfire, so to speak, across our community, and it's negatively impacting people's perception of our city government. It's negatively affecting people's perception of if we can actually just show up for work every day and do what needs to get done. And that's concerning. And going back to such a small fiscal impact of 1.75%, which I do think was presented within the remaining balance from the previous fiscal year, that there are funds on hand that we could make those raise increases with. And I think we've also established we need to look at offsetting additional expenses in the future with general revenue fund. We do that with the Police department, we could cover the entire police department. I think our taxpayers are asking us to make sure public safety is a #1 priority, and we're able to deliver that to the fullest extent. Do I think we're meeting that with firefighters leaving our department with years-long public feud? No, I don't. I think we need to address that. So my recommendation, and I'll make a motion that we adopt the union recommendation with the 1.75% pay increase effective October 1st, 2023, and the pension reduction to 12.94, DA 14.94 for C.
Commissioner Matlow has made a motion reflecting, and that's accurately reflecting the union's recommendation, correct? For the record? Okay. Commissioner Matlow has made a motion reflecting the union's recommendation to this quasi-judicial board. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Porter. And Commissioner Porter, you're recognized for comment.
Thank you. I have one clarifying question for Commissioner Matlow. The pension contribution rates in your motion, those are also effective October 1st, 2023?
Yes.
Okay. I feel comfortable, I feel more than comfortable supporting that motion, and I thank the special magistrate for his consideration. I mean, I read through it, it's clear he was incredibly thoughtful in his deliberations. Two things relevant, of course, to the discussion we've been having that I want to read. One, the city ordinance which establishes the fire services fee provides that, quote, all or a portion of the cost to provide such fire services, facilities, and programs shall be funded from proceeds of the fire services charge. The remaining cost, if any, required to provide fire services, facilities, and programs shall be funded by available city revenues other than such proceeds. And according to him as well, quote, while the city asserts it cannot afford it, the record does not support that assertion. That being said, that we can afford it above all other considerations as public safety, what's in the best interest of the public, of the city, and of our public employees, I feel comfortable with what's been presented to us and moving forward with our next negotiation so that we can address those issues and move on from this. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Williams-Cox, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a substitute motion that we move that the impasse in collective bargaining negotiations in the matter of Tallahassee professional firefighters, IAFF Local 2339 and City of Tallahassee, case number SM 2023-029, regarding only the supervisor unit comprised of battalion chiefs and captains be resolved as follows. To accept the recommended resolution of the special magistrate for Article 12.2 and 12.13 to implement a 2.5% reduction in the amount of pension contribution by the employees and a $500 non-recurring bonus, and make the effective date of this action upon the ratification of this resolution, or if no ratification, the date of the action of the legislative body on August 21st, 2024.
The motion's been made by Commissioner Williams-Cox. I will second the motion. You're recognized for comment.
Thank you. I think that it is important that we have correct information. And I believe that the magistrate has come to our community, has done due diligence, has taken time to do this. We could have been here sooner. We could have been here in a different way. But negotiations broke down for whatever reason. I'm not pointing any fingers at anyone, but it's time for us to put this to rest so that we can, in earnest, work on the 3-year and work on better negotiations between both sides to try to accomplish those things that may not have been accomplished in the 1 year. The 3-year is going to be more important because it is for a longer period of time. And I just believe that when we start mixing apples and oranges about the fire services fee and general revenue, The police is funded out of general revenue because there's no specific fee to fund police. But there is a specific fee to fund fire services that we pay. So I don't want us to confuse the public on that. That is why that has occurred. And to compare the fire union to the police union is unfair. If you want to be a member of the police union, then you join it. If you want to be a member of the fire union, then you join it. But these organizations are separate and apart for many reasons, and they're on a different track for negotiations, some by their own request, as we heard, that we're at this one-year bridge at the request of the union, of the firefighters union. And so unfortunately, the time has come that we've got to either fix this bridge so we can cross over to the 3-year, or we've got to just, move on from it. And I think that enough money and time has been spent in trying to resolve this. I'd like to resolve it today in the best interest of the public so we can move on to the 3-year. And what we didn't get done in the 1 year, let's put it on the table for the 3-year and let's get that done as best we can to the good of our community. And Commissioner Matlow, you are correct. It has had far-reaching impact negatively on our community. It is not because the city has gone out there in social media and talked bad about the union, but it is because the union has gone out there and talked bad about the city. So we got to put responsibility where the responsibility lies, as well as many other things that have occurred. This community is not blind to what they've seen and what they've heard. We are all individuals. We're all human beings behind these titles. We felt it too. We feel it too. And I want it to end today so that we can work on better relations moving forward. Every employee is valued, those who are in unions and those who are not. And I just think that when you decide to join a union, and I have been a part of unions in the past when I worked for the state of Florida, you accept the position of your union and you move forward. And they recommend you and represent you. And so we are here today because of something that started many months ago that should have ended many months ago. But for whatever reason, it didn't. And so today, I believe we need to accept the report of the magistrate. We have people out there, firefighters and engineers, who have already accepted that pay increase with no retroactivity. It is not fair now to come back and offer retroactivity to their bosses when they didn't get the benefit of that. That could have been a part of the negotiations from the very beginning, that we look at retroactivity. And if the magistrate thought it was necessary and fair, I believe he would have recommended it, especially since it was brought to his attention. But he chose not to do that. And I think it is also unfair to talk about a 0% increase. The kinds of salaries that I just heard, that is, the beginning salaries and then the median and then above are salaries that are comparable to the work that is being done. I have no problem with that you should be paid for the work that you do. But if your goal was to be at 60% market rate and you're there, then perhaps for a 1-year bridge, 0% may be okay, because here we are, the new year begins in 30 days or so, where you can then come back and redo this, rethink this, and reimagine what can happen here. So I'm comfortable with moving forward and accepting the magistrate's report in whole, in totality, not bifurcating it, but in whole. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want our firefighters, our captains and battalion chiefs to know that I fully support you and what you do. This community values the invaluable service that you provide on a daily basis to this community. So I don't want anybody to think that the decisions that I make indicate that I do not support, or any of us do not support, the professional services that you provide every day. This community appreciates that. I can tell you that. I guess and the reason I asked the question about the length of time that the special magistrate had to study this issue and to come up with his recommendations. And, of course, we've heard his professional background and experience and the fact that he was chosen or agreed upon by both sides of the negotiations. I have a difficult time sitting here, like I said, in less than 2 hours and redoing what a special magistrate took 30 or 2 months, 2 months to study, a professional magistrate, 2 months, and came up with his recommendations for the entire bargaining unit. And now we separate the units and we want to do something different. And we've only had less than 2 hours to study this issue among, I don't think any of us have ever been in a quasi-judicial hearing of this matter. I know I haven't in the 10 years that I've been on the city commission. I have a problem with the unfairness of the retroactive pay not being given to the firefighters, the rank and file, but we're considering that. Now, I have a problem with that. And I really believe that the issues that are on the table today, the increase in salary and the pension contribution, can be dealt with in a way that would compensate for where we are now with this bridge compromise, as Commissioner Williams-Cox puts it. And so that's why I would be in support of the motion that's been provided, and certainly would look forward to us addressing these issues in that 3-year contract. And I really believe that it can be. And so that's my position in terms of where I think we are and where we need to go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, colleagues, we are supposed to adjourn in 3 minutes. Is there any objection that we extend our time till 12:10? I'm great.
No objection.
Commissioner Porter, I'm going to give, I saw your hand first, and Commissioner Matlow, then I'm going to provide my comments. We'll take a vote, and we'll go from there. Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering what the maker of the motion and the seconder of the motion, what would you think about accepting the union's request if it's not retroactive, if the concern is the fairness?
Go ahead, Maker.
I am, as I said in my motion, I'm ready to accept the magistrate's report that did not include retroactive at all.
I know. My question is whether if we removed the retroactivity from the original motion, what would you think about that?
I'm going to stick with the motion that I made.
Commissioner Porter, follow up?
That's all for me.
Okay, Commissioner Matlow?
Thank you. Just 2 points. I agree with Commissioner Richardson on the fairness of the retroactivity for the contract. I know this isn't appropriate here, but I will bring that to tonight's meeting, that we request to open both contracts back up and make them both retroactive. On point number 2, I'm concerned with the motion just based on comments I've heard today, particularly about the speech of union members who have absolute right to stand up and demand for a fair pay. And it really feels punitive when we point to that speech in our decision-making today. The speech of union members is not the public interest that we're here to defend. While it may be unsettling to hear sometimes, it may be embarrassing to hear sometimes, everybody has the right to advocate for their own well-being. So I will vote against this, based on the fact that it feels punitive and it's not in the public interest.
Mr. Mayor, on point.
Mayor,
My comment in that regard, Commissioner Matlow, was to your comment as to what has happened in our community about the negative connotation. I did not abridge upon anyone's right to speech, including my own. And I just spoke to what you said about the negative environment. And I was just speaking to, I live in this community. I talk to people too, and I've heard what has been said. And so I was not speaking to the individuals, I was speaking to your comment about how we got here. Thank you.
Okay, let me go ahead and bring this in with my comments, and then we'll take a vote and we'll go from there. First and foremost, let me start off by thanking all the men and women of the Tallahassee Fire Department. It's been a very difficult year, 2 years. I know that there's been a lot of hurt feelings, a lot of anger, quite frankly. But I want you to know, speaking on behalf of myself and my family, we truly do appreciate everything that you do. And you are an incredible department. I'm very proud to work with you. We do support you. Mr. Davis, I do want to thank you for representing the union throughout all of this. We will begin the 3-year negotiation coming up very soon. And we will move forward after today as well. We have to ask ourselves how we got to this situation first and foremost as the quasi-judicial body. We started off this process by request of the union to get out of the same cycle as PBA so that we can negotiate separately, which I think we all thought was fair. That's why we decided to move forward with a 1-year bridge. I think we had different ideas coming in on what should be on the table for a 1-year bridge. I think some of us thought that it should be of a more narrow scope. I think some of us thought that maybe it should be like a 3-year negotiation where we put everything on the table. I think that took quite some time to narrow down the scope of what would actually be. It was the union that declared the impasse, which they have full right to do. We went to the magistrate. I want to thank both attorneys representing both the union, Mr. Brantley, and Mr. Madmore for representing management, for all the hard work that y'all have done representing your respective sides as well. You all spent, I can't even remember, what, a full day or 2 days or 3 days with the magistrate, presenting, writing, submitting the evidence, the whole 9 yards. Magistrate submitted the special order. The city immediately agreed to all terms. Union agreed to most of the terms except for the 2 that are before us. Correct. So where are we and why are we here? And I think it's important for the public to know that this is not a city commission meeting. This is not a city commission meeting. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding. We 5 elected lay people, none of us have any legal background whatsoever, are to take into consideration the special order that the magistrate has written and put forth. And the first question before us, it is my opinion, is do you agree or disagree with the magistrate's special order? And number 2, if you disagree, where do you disagree? And do you have any ideas on how to move forward? I had a lot of questions and a lot of comments, and I'm not going to go through the laundry list. The difference between general revenue and fire services fee. If we are, as a community, going to move forward and pay for part of our fire protection and fire services through general revenue, that is a joint conversation that needs to take place with the Leon County government as well. Seeing how 1/3 of the population that would be paying property taxes lives in the unincorporated, while 2/3 of the population are within the city limits. We need to have a very serious conversation because what was referenced here today by counsel representing the union was fund balance transfer. In the budgeting world, that's our savings account. This is not our operating account. That is a philosophical conversation to have about whether we pay recurring expenses year after year for salary out of the fund balance account, and how does that impact the fiscal health of the city? If we want to have that conversation, we can have that conversation. The police department is paid through general revenue because the police department patrols the city of Tallahassee. But there are jurisdictions within the city of Tallahassee that are outside of the police department. That's why Florida State University does not pay property taxes. FAMU, TCC, State Capitol Complex, Federal Complex, County Complex. They also have their own law enforcement jurisdictions. The LE, Capitol Police, just to name a few, Florida State Police, JMU Police, TCC Police, U.S. Marshals. However, in our community, we have one fire service. To make it equitable, that's why we have the fire services fee, so that the universities do pay in, the school districts pay in, so that the state government pays in, so that it is equitable and it doesn't fall on just the shoulders of property owners, either individual or businesses. But again, that's a conversation for another day moving forward of general revenue versus fire services fee. The bottom line for me is, and it was mentioned during the presentations today, that there was not a single new argument that was made. I believe, Mr. Brantley, this is the same argument that was made on behalf of the union to the magistrate. And I believe, Mr. Mattermore, this is the same argument that you made to the magistrate as well. I do believe that the magistrate is an expert. I do believe that the magistrate spent a lot of time on this issue. I do believe that the magistrate went through and thoroughly made the recommendations. And let me tell you something, part of the recommendations were a little hard to swallow for city management. You were doing poorly with the firefighter, not poorly, that's a bad word, but you needed to do better with firefighter and engineering ranks. And the management immediately said, we accept the magistrate's order and we're going to do better. And I agree with my colleagues that as we move into the 3-year negotiation, the brighter days are ahead of us. And that we're going to have a great negotiation. And everything is on the table. And it is time to take the department to the next level. Absolutely. But the 1-year bridge contract, in my mind, is not the year to do that. So the bottom question for me is, do I agree with the magistrate's order or do I disagree? And I agree with the magistrate's order, which is a 2.5% reduction, which is an increase in take-home pay, and the $500 bonus as well. And I do look forward to the next round of negotiations, smooth negotiations for the 3-year contract. With that, there is a motion on the table made by Commissioner Williams-Cox to accept the motion on impasse resolution that was read into the record on behalf of Mr. Mattermore, representing city management, seconded by myself. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
And the motion passes 3-2 with Commissioner Porter and Commissioner Matlow in dissent. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this quasi-judicial proceeding. Madam Attorney, any final comments?
Nothing further. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, 2 items just for clarification. What was the outcome? Was Commissioner Matlow's motion ever voted on?
No, sir, because there was a substitute motion that was made. In order for Commissioner Matlow's motion to have been voted on, the substitute motion would have had to be voted down, which then takes you back to the original motion on the table. Madam Attorney, is that correct?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Because the substitute motion passed, the original motion was not addressed.
The motion that was adopted, is this the verbatim motion that was handed to the commission by Mr. Mattermore?
Maker of the motion, that was read verbatim into the record, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
So Mr. Mattermore provided the ultimate motion that was adopted today at the
I
hearing?
believe we all saw Mr. Mattermore hand it to the clerk. That was provided to us today.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. All those, well, we voted, excuse me. We are in adjourn until 3 o'clock this afternoon for the regularly scheduled city commission meeting.